battle in the airport, and they all thought, well, Team Cap got away, and they found out they were right. It wasn't Bucky. If they had gone through all the administrative, Bucky would still be in solitary confinement. The doctor, whatever it was, the weird, crazy person, he would have created more destruction. He would have uncovered something else. I know in the end, he was the one that killed the other super soldiers, but even if there was a chance that he had time enough to use them for something that he wanted to do, that would have been 5 more Buckys, 5 more advanced, uncontrollable, dangerous Buckys. Because he had that instinct of, it's not him, he wouldn't do that now. And because he followed that instinct, he followed that hunch, and he was right, that means if the Sokovia Accords had gone into effect, well then, that's just 5 more people, even more dangerous. So my counterclaim on that is, yeah, maybe he was driven by emotions, but you can tell a lot of a person if you know them. And while maybe Cap doesn't know the Winter Soldier, he knows Bucky, and now that Bucky is Bucky, not the Winter Soldier, he was able to tell that there was a difference, and he believed that wasn't him, and he was going to prove it. Now, I'm sure that if Bucky actually was the one to do it, and Steve found out, it would be hard, but Steve is on the side of justice. However, I agree, his own interpretation of justice is as serves to him and to his people that he serves. So I think that even if Bucky was guilty, he would still turn Bucky in, but he would want a fair and just and safe treatment for Bucky, and not just pointing fingers and saying, you're dead now. So that's my spiel.
I'd like to make a quick, just throw in my opinion real quick, that I think my biggest problem with the Accords is simply the way that they went about trying to get them to agree to them. They gave them
I agree that
less than
was
24 hours to look through this giant, set of Accords that are
Literally
super
right or die.
restricting, that are, for all going to keep them in captivity 24/7. And so, but they're asking, the Avengers to sign it right off the bat, no questions asked, just
give away all your freedom, do what the government says because we know better and you're dangerous.
Yeah,
and
they're also kind of they're kind of adding a sort of they're altering the Avengers' opinions, I guess, about the Accords, by shaming them about all the past casualties they've had, and so they're already asking them for that, and then okay, so now you know what the right thing to do is. So sign this giant, Accord.
I agree that the Accords weren't perfect, but I think that the idea of them was probably better than Cap's idea of the people with the power to hurt ordinary people or to protect ordinary people choose what they do. Now, I get to make my response. So, oh God.
Notice I raised my hand, not interrupted.
So the point of the law is to protect people, and the judiciary system is part of the law. The judiciary system is designed to make sure to separate the innocent from the guilty. And admittedly, it's not perfect. But where Bucky turned into the judiciary system, it is probable that due to brainwashing for 70 years, he likely would have been rehabilitated because trauma does change people. And helped instead of merely thrown into situations such as Cap threw him into. Furthermore, you said that Cap knew Bucky. Once again,
hi Kylie.
Hello. Trauma changes people. So I believe that even if Bucky was returning to himself and did have his former memories, he wouldn't be the same person. It's like when a soldier comes back from war, they're not the same. They've been changed because it's... Yeah. Thank you for making my point.
Does that mean I have to give something to the other side?
So, because had Cap gone through legal measures about the Winter Soldiers, perhaps they could have been saved because they were probably in need of therapy. So, turning them over to the legal system would have allowed them to get the help that they needed instead of merely doing whatever Cap was going to do, beat them up.
Unless they want to just erase them from history.
Okay.
Yeah,
as long as
debate gonna go on?
Like, I love you guys.
Some debates go for an hour, so I think.
Yeah, no.
I enjoy this. I'm
know,
not
this
right or
is
wrong.
fun.
I'm enjoying this.
I was gonna do modern UN, but I didn't have time.
Yeah, I did. I just was too busy to actually go to any of the
Same.
conferences. So, okay, so
The debate will at least end at 10 o'clock when it's like that.
yeah.
I did debate in school, and like those debates were an hour long.
Oh
Yeah.
god.
So, I'm going off of your idea of legal therapy through the judicial system, depending on what is ruled. So, I'm going with kind of a personal take on this. So, I know a lot of people who have PTSD and have pretty much been legally required to go to therapy and counseling. And I can tell you that it is a small percentage and I guess chance that they get the therapist that suits them, that is able to understand, help, and support them as they need to be. So while I do agree that if legally Bucky was caught and required to go to therapy, because he was such a high-class, high-level criminal, murderer, terrorist, all of these things,
A lot of quotations.
they would put him with what they deemed as the most capable therapist, which would be more focused on self-defense and understanding what he did, not getting him the care that he needed in order to be able to recover, and then discuss everything that's happened. Because PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's traumatic experiences in the past, as this name says, but pretty much it haunts you. It can be in several different ways. It can be traumatic event, traumatic experience, emotions, mental, family, social, cultural, any of these things. It really affects you. And I know, at least for many of my friends who have PTSD, it's very hard to fully be open with a therapist and to be honest with a therapist, because a lot of time there's different types of therapists. There's the one that people go to when they just want to tell all their problems. Now obviously that does not suit Bucky, because Bucky, he's scared. He's just gone through all this stuff. Yeah, he has PTSD. And so he's not just going to spill everything that's ever happened to him in the past 70 years. So Bucky isn't going to get that kind of therapist. However, that kind of therapist is what's majoritarily used and expected. The second type of therapist is when people tell their problems and they give input, they sympathize, they validate those person's feelings, and they go and they suggest alternatives, options, coping mechanisms. Those are slightly rarer therapists, and again, Bucky's less likely to talk that much, but it might be useful to get that input. The third type of therapist is rare, but it's incredibly helpful. But it's to those who know they need help, and they go and seek it. Those are the people who say, hey, I have this problem. It's not good for me. This is how it affects me. How do I go above and beyond this? How do I get out of this loop? Now that's rare. Bucky's not on that stage right now. He's in between stages pretty much 2 and 3. Therapists 2 and 3. And that's a very hard line to fight. So what many of my friends do when they don't find the right therapist for them is they come to people they know to understand, to be validated, and to look for other alternatives. Now, for many times, that person is me, because I do have many experiences with these things. So going to someone you know, who trusts you, whether you knew them way back then or now, that creates a safe environment where you're able to share your stuff without judgment, without people recording, listening, thinking about everything that you've done and why. Being able to know that what happened is okay and it's validated, and then seeing what possible outcomes is. Saying, hey, yeah, it happened. It sucks. There's so much more to go. Everything that happened, it happened, and you're here now. We can go forward. So in that reason, I believe that the better therapist, maybe it's not legal therapy, but it's best to be with your friends. Maybe it doesn't get you the different coping mechanisms, but I can tell you I've done a ton of research. Maybe I don't have the official title, maybe I haven't gone to therapy school or whatever it is, but I've done a lot of personal research, done a lot of different tools, different sites, different organizations, all of these things. I'm not a certified therapist, but I got a lot of people who use me as one, and sometimes I recommend them to actual therapists because sometimes they need it. But the first start is one that's someone you can trust. And so the first start for Bucky for therapy would just be opening up to anyone. And the only one he trusts, the only one he knows is Steve. And that's why I think legal therapy right off the bat after being pretty much in solitary confinement wouldn't be productive because he wouldn't open up. And unless you open up, nothing happens. Thank you.
Are you going to be a therapist when you grow up?
I don't know. I don't know.
Some therapists actually suck though.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly.
Literally, I'm not going to go into that because I could go a lot longer.
I have also done a fair bit of research into that sort of thing. I wasn't suggesting that he had to have, I wasn't intending to suggest that he had to have a legal therapist who's certified or whatever. I was trying to say that I think even if he is opening up to Steve or whatever, I think it would be better for him to be doing so in a controlled environment where he's not in danger of being triggered, as can quite likely happen when you're on the run, as Cap and he are, technically. And I was going to say something else, and I have no clue what it is. So, that's great. Yes.
Okay, so, triggered in a controlled environment. So, let's just go with that. Triggered in a controlled environment. When Bucky was legally caught, when he was brought in, he was triggered in a controlled environment. He was put into solitary confinement under all of the security. And the legal help that they brought in, even though it was an imposter, they triggered him. Because people want to know why people do what they do. What makes them tick? What has impacted them to be who they are? And so whether it be someone with malintent or someone who just really wants to know. Because to be honest, I really want to know. People are going to trigger him because the thing is that you can't go throughout life without ever being annoyed, without ever being triggered, without ever experiencing any hardship, because if your entire life is happiness, then what's the meaning of happiness if you have nothing to compare it to? Literally, he was triggered in a safe space. He was triggered getting therapy. And sometimes getting therapy is what triggers you. Because, again, a lot of therapists are not very good, and a lot of therapists remind you of what happened. And that's scary. And for most people, that's what triggers them. Again, can't speak to everyone. Obviously, there's a whole world out there. So the thing is that there's always going to be someone who can... Oh, there's lots of hands. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I was just going to say, moral of the story is don't trust the government.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just look at what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, our government's bad.
Yeah.
Our government. No, I understand
Wait,
what
have
you're
you
saying
made a
completely.
decision?
That's not the sort of what I meant, but yeah.
Our judge has raised her hand up.
So I actually have to agree with you on the therapist part because I had a therapist and she did not do crap for me. She was a nice person and all, and like I liked her as a friend, but like she didn't do anything for me as a therapist. She didn't make me feel better or anything.
Yeah,
So,
same.
like, on that
Yeah,
part, I
same.
agree with you.
Like I had one in who's current.
We had like
And literally, she just listens and she asks the most random questions. Like, you're not helping me with what you're supposed to be helping me with. So I was like, let's switch again. I'm like, yes.
I went to therapy twice, and literally, I was like, okay, so here's my problem. She's like, wow, okay, well, yeah, no, lots of people feel. And then she described every single thing that, like, was just like, stop talking. That is something personal. You do not cross that. You do not touch that. Why are you saying that? And I was just like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm sorry, what? It was weird.
Yeah,
I
I had
don't-
like 2 therapists, one for family and one for myself. The first one, the family one, didn't last very long, probably because she didn't really help us. The second one, which was for me, I felt like she was just rehashing what I like literally just said. She didn't give me anything to work with. She was just like, so you feel this? I'm like,
I just said
yeah,
that.
I just, are you, is there an echo in here? Like,
That's parody.
Yeah.
I don't
Mine would
have
just,
any
like,
practical
ask
experience with
So
therapists.
what about
I
your
just do
family?
research. I'm
This is, you know.
next time I open up to
And I'd be
someone,
like,
it'll
okay,
be
so
my
how can I help?
autopsy.
Well, I used to do that.
that's
good.
Yeah.
that's really good.
Or she would just like not talk to me. For
All right,
a
so
while. Okay.
those pretty much those who have contributed have are subsequent speakers. Are there any questions open to the panel?
Yes. Are we done yet?
It depends on the
Say
moderator.
one more thing if you're about to
Yes,
choose.
subsequent. Subsequent.
Mr. Stark, I don't feel
What's that?
She's being possessed by a wild animal.
Okay, please make your decision.
Yeah, please.
Or if there's
No.
any questions.
May I just say,
Good
I
job.
did this
Next
debate
time
on my
someone
own.
attacks us, make sure
I
you
did not
arm
have
yourself with a
aid.
pillow.
Got it.
I did not have aid from external sources.
Hey, I said about
What external
I said about
sources?
PTSD.
She didn't either.
Did someone say something about like Spider-Man?
No, she was
I supported your
Like,
PTSD. We supported your claim.
Oh, yay, she said PTSD. Was that what you said?
As much as I love Captain America and all his hilarious commentary and Spider-Man and all his nerdiness, I think that I do have to go with Captain America on this one because because the government to me isn't that trustworthy because they're clearly hiding stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, our government's crap.
Yeah.
I would not. Also, if I had like the last bucket of water on Earth and Trump was dying, I would not kiss him.
Yeah. No, but also in Winter Soldier, what was it's the group that's like
Shield. Shield with Hydra.
No, yes,
Shield
Hydra.
with Hydra.
Like you don't know if Hydra is also in government, so you can't trust them.
I do. I think Steve was kind of disillusioned by Hydra